Okay, everybody knows recording is in progress now. You are being recorded. So just FYI, I don't know that we have anybody with us, but that is okay. We will record. So welcome to number 2 week of the spiritual journey of aging. So last week, just to recap, we did a section on what it means to have a pre and a post life of work and the kinds of things that give us meaning or purpose. We talked about what it means to have purpose and why that's important for our lives. Talked a little bit about references from Joan Chittister. This is her book, The Gift of Years. I have it. Somebody is going to borrow this one from me, but I highly recommend this book if you've not read it before. It is a real gift to read it. And you do not have to read it in order. There's little sections like possibility, letting go, success, religion. So you don't have to read it in order. So it's a pretty nice book. This week, we're going to focus on a divided life. What does it mean to have a divided life? And I have some handouts for you, but I don't want to do that just yet. So we go to, let's just do a little bit of statistics. What's happening in America? Aging in America. You probably know that we are an aging country. Sometimes when people say in the church to me, oh, we just don't have enough children. There's a lot of older people here. Well, friends, it is reflective of where we are in our times in society. Certainly, there are not as many young people here as there used to be, but we also are a shifting population right now. So know this. We're just talking about people that have lived for 100 years and how much change I've seen. In the earliest 20th century, the average person only lived to 48. 48. And the 28th century, 78. And you can see the stats there. 1 in 3 is over 50, 1 in 6 over 65. By 2030, they expect 1 in 5 people to be over 65. That's 20% of the population. That's a large chunk. And then you can see that normally women get older, live longer than men. And that's been true for some time.
Why is that?
Why is that? So some of it is diseases particular to men. If you ask my husband, he'd probably say, because we're so stubborn and we don't listen. He just had a doctor appointment the other day, and the doctor said, you do know that if you're married, you tend to live longer, which is very true, married or in a relationship. That is very true. That's not just some, anecdote. That's very true. If you have a serious relationship, men will tend to live longer when they're in a serious relationship with someone. And
That's because we nag them to go to the doctor.
yeah, right. And the doc, go ahead.
That's because you feed us.
Here's what the doctor said. My husband goes, well, why is that? The doctor said, well, if you ask me, it's because my wife takes care of me and nags me to do the right thing.
The beginning of the baby boomers are turning 79 right now. So
Yes.
The first ones born after World War II are now 79.
Oh, yes, right. Now our screen is not showing. Why is that not doing that? I'll try again. This did this the other week, didn't it? We lost our, hold on. Again, pardon me just a moment. This did this to me the other day, her display didn't wanna. Yeah, now it started. That's not good, is it?
It's defying you.
It is defying me. It's not very nice.
Personally, I find working with Android devices much easier than computers.
What's that?
I think working with Android devices is far easier than using a computer, but I understand for those you need to.
Amazing.
Wow.
It's just getting.
Yeah, right. No?
That's not real.
Well, I
Had to take some of the milk out of my face. My legs started itching. Then take it almost, take most of the water.
Just when all else works.
You have to be on this. For 6 months. I'm on 2 months, and then I did a walking, then I have. to put on my-
I'm reconnecting. I really want you to see the screen.
No, that's true. It's nice having Dan over here. He does cook for me. Mike doesn't. And to get up.
There we go. This is better.
Yeah.
It's 20 to 11. Get up. She jumped out and really like the press. No, he's bruised, but that was it.
I read it twice.
Almost there.
There's no sign, there's no truck.
It's having a mind of its own.
Well, it's on the screen now.
Okay, it finally did that.
Did you bring your hearing aids?
That means the whole book, somebody wanted to.
Somebody else said there's a bridge.
I like to talk about.
Yeah, she was.
Probably not that.
Okay, yeah, I've got it, friends. Took a minute, but we're there. There we go. All right. Sorry for that technical delay. It's having a mind of its own. You know how that is, don't you? Yeah. Youngest to old, it's how we're classified. Youngest to old, 65 to 74, middle old, 75 to 84, oldest old, 85 plus. And this is the place where most of us will experience dementia of some sort when we get here. That's very normal. And if you live to 90, if you have not had any physical ailments, by the time you hit 90, you will have something, even if it's minor. You know, you'll have something, okay? So now, yeah, some people have it now, that's right. 65 to 74, right now, we say that most of them are as hardy as they were in middle age, whatever they're calling that now. It used to be 40, I think it's like 50 now. This group is very big. It's the largest of those 3 age groups. And here's what somebody was talking about, baby boomers. The first wave of them reached full retirement age over almost 15 years ago, around 14 years ago. And in the 20 years following 2031, from 2011 till 2031, 75 million people are expected to retire in that boomer. And this is, I just looked this up just to confirm that it was still, the data was still good. 10,000 new retirees are added to Social Security and Medicare every day. every day, okay? These are big numbers. Now, in this middle old, this is kind of small right now, but people in this category rarely see themselves as old. Anybody have that experience? If you're in this age group, if you've known somebody in this age group, they don't feel old, okay? It grew about half the rate of the youngest soul. What's that?
I beg to differ.
Do you feel old?
I was pretty inky this morning.
It depends. It all depends on your perspective, right? When my mother-in-law, she was 86, I think, when she went to Country Meadows, and this is because she had some dementia. And she wasn't able to care for herself in the house, and she didn't want a nurse coming in, and so finally, she was admitted to the hospital because she was falling and passing out. Doctor said, "You're not going home. You're not able to live on your own." So she went to Country Meadows. I just remember going to visit her. We would go at least once a week to see her. And the one week she said, "You want to come to lunch with me?" I said, "Okay." So I went to lunch with her, and she said, "Around you, Martha, all you see is a bunch of old people." And that is often the perspective of people. They don't always see it in themselves. So this is pretty common. And what is old to you is not necessarily old to me, right? Oldest old, this is, 85 to 94. The fastest growing segment as people live longer. The growth rate is twice that of the 65 and almost 4 times of the growth of the total population of the US. So it's huge. And right now they represent a little under 2%, but by 2040, it's gonna roughly double. So you can see as we age and get older, last longer, of course, we have more people in those groups, all right? Expectation is by 2060 that it will triple. Growing older. So only 5% of a 65 age group-ish are confined to nursing homes. Often when you see people that are in their 60s, 70s in nursing facilities or retirement places, it's for maybe they have dementia, some chronic illness, or maybe like my sister-in-law, her husband passed away and she didn't want to be in a big house, first of all. She doesn't, care to take care of all the things, and so she went to a retirement place. Just like, I just can't deal with all that. She has no children. So it was better for her. So sometimes those decisions get made. But look at the number jump. By the time you get to 85, 50% are in nursing facilities or a retirement place. So this little quote here, as we age, our developmental terrain here gets more layered. Patience trumps speed. Restraint trumps ambition. Wisdom trumps IQ. Leaving a legacy trumps making our mark. And a bit of humor saves us all. I agree with that. So we hope these things happen, right? Especially the wisdom over the IQ and the restraint versus ambitious. I mean, I don't know how you feel about all this, when you were working or if you're still working, you have that tendency to, the next promotion, the next thing, the next project, and what am I looking toward? What am I aiming to do? Where do I want to end up when I retire? Those kinds of things. But once you're over that mark, then there's not so much of the what we might call the rat race, right? The ambition, the trying to make sure we are doing well at work because we've got to take care of all of our responsibilities and our children and whatever else is going on in our life. Sometimes we've got both ends, like we talked about last week, we had children and parents, so there's a lot of that going on. But I do like this quote, but it's that shift. It's like a little bump in the road. So we're going to move into what is called a divided life. And I'm going to hand this out to you. You would just this one down. The Divided Life is a book, written by Parker Palmer. So I recommend him highly, especially if you're in that aging period, or especially if you're working. And you're wondering, is work going with my faith? Is work going with who I am? He's a great author, Parker Palmer. So he talks about this thing called a divided life. Any guess what that might mean? What might you call a divided life?
I'm there for aging. Children.
Okay, so you think of it in terms of splitting your time. Okay, it could be, but in this case, it's not. It's okay. But I mean, that's a good way to think about it, dividing your time, right? Parker Palmer talks about a divided life in the sense that and who am I? Right? Who am I versus what do I do? Okay. Who am I? What do I do? Do these things go together? When might that happen? When might you not? Each section, each part of you being reflected, who I am and what I do. When are those in conflict?
To me, I would think it would be. I am at a certain age and I know what is expected, what people think when they look at me,
Yeah,
but what I do may not reflect that.
yeah, right, sure, it may not be consistent, right? Yeah.
It's like. If one of my daughters would say to me, Mom, I can't believe you're wearing that, that's for a 20-year-old.
Okay,
Not that that happened because 20-year-old clothes would fit me, but.
yeah, I heard that. Expectations, so right, some of that is defined by expectations of others, of ourselves. What if you're in a work situation and you're asked to do something that you find unethical?
Well, I used to work for an insurance company and one of our directives was find a way to deny it. And I couldn't, it was so depressing that I just was miserable and I had to quit.
Find a way to deny him. So that's a corporate ethic. It really is. I mean, the place you're working, if that's what the message is. And if you say to yourself, that doesn't sound right to me. That's not how I would like to live or how I would like my insurance claims to be processed. Well, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna deal with it? You left, right?
I became very depressed first. I
Yeah.
tried to stick with it because it was paying well.
Because it was paying the bills, right? Yeah, right. So these are hard moments in our lives where who we are, how we define ourselves. And we talked a little bit about last week, remember? We said about what gives us purpose, what we do. That's part of who you are, right? And I think I gave you a little homework last week to bring back what things have, let's get the right wording. It was. Characteristics you developed over the years, which I now use to serve others. So things you developed over the years, you or people around you have helped develop in you, that I now use to serve. This is a part of who you are. So thinking about your characteristics, who you are, that's part of this discussion. So who would you say you are? Let's begin there. Who are you?
Well, see, I was able to always help out with different things with Second Saturday and such. Now I can't. You know,
But you still like to help people.
well, yeah, you still have that
Would you say
time, but
that you're a helper?
I was a helper, but I can no longer be a helper. And what I'm saying is once you reach a certain point in your life, you're a little more awkward. You don't want to fall around.
Yep, your balance might be off.
So you don't do a lot of the things that you did earlier, but you still have that in your heart.
You do. And so can I offer just a little pushback to that? Maybe physically, you're not able to help people, but when you talk to others and support them, and I know you do that, you help them. So maybe the way you help has changed. Okay, so Lynette says she's a helper. Who else? What else what words would you use to describe yourself?
Okay, this is going to sound strange, but I feel like I have developed patience over the years,
Yeah.
but I am not a patient person.
Okay.
You can,
No, that doesn't sound weird because, sometimes, so have you ever heard the terms introvert and extrovert?
Mhm.
I am a forced extrovert, okay? I was very shy growing up, so I understand that. So being patient is not something you would say was, natural or something you feel as though that was just a part of your personality, but it's been developed, right? It's been
Right, but it's-
developed.
More as a result of what I do.
Right, okay, so that's okay, that's still part of who you are, even though you don't feel like that's one of maybe the gifts that you have, but it's been developed. And we would say that about gifts, some or what we would say is natural, or we were born with, or how many people have you known or say about somebody little, oh, look at that, they're just a natural born, whatever. Right? So who else are you? What else describes you?
Good listener.
Good listener.
Same stories over and over.
Who else are you?
Maybe increase. Yeah,
You're empathetic.
when I was a kid, my parents always said, you need to respect older people. You need to be pleasant to older people. Those older people weren't very nice. And I was on the impression, when I get old, I can be nasty as ever because it would be payback.
It's your turn, huh?
It's funny how you look at your relationships with older people when you're a child.
It is, and it depends on who the older people are in your lives.
Right.
I mean, our kids were blessed to have my husband's parents close by. Mine lived pretty far away, but they were great role models for our kids. And not that they didn't ever have their rough moments. We all do. But yeah, so you don't always have great role models, right? And then sometimes that translates into who you are. Who else are you? I mean, besides your attributes, who are you?
Does it count if you're a wife and someone who volunteers to take care of dogs?
Yes, that's roles. I was waiting for roles. Wife and animal caregiver. Somebody say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Think in terms of your roles. You're giving me some descriptions, which is wonderful. But what's your role?
Mother and grandmother.
Mother, grandmother. Uh-huh. Cindy, you also work.
I work for time, yes, and sister.
Sister.
Uh-huh.
What's your job at work?
Baker.
Baker. That's part of who you are. This is you. What else? What else are you?
Faithful.
Faithful.
Well, going along with that, Christian.
Thank you. Anybody at early service?
Yes.
Yeah. What thing did we have at early service?
Baptism.
Also. Spouse. Or I'll just say significant other for some people.
Neighbor.
Neighbors, yeah.
Yeah.
So, neighbors, friends, okay, you can see all these different things making up who you are. Now, let's just say I hope you all have wonderful neighbors, but occasionally we don't. Occasionally we have neighbors that can cause problems, right, or do something you don't think is right. This is also a conflict too. This is part of your, what might be a divided life. How am I gonna treat my neighbors? I have had neighbors that profess to be deep and abiding Christians, but that have been very nasty to other neighbors. And I don't mean just a little bit. I mean very prejudiced, very vocal, all right? Do you think there's something going on there?
I think they're not really Christians.
Well, or it's not translating, right? It's not crossing over. Some people do what they call compartmentalize. Ever hear that term, compartmentalize? They break it into divisions. I had a guy that I worked with, actually, he was the vice president of HR. This was at Rite Aid, the corporate office, back when I used to be here. And he would tell me, he was also an attorney. He would tell me, Martha, when I'm in meeting and I have to do things, you know, he would profess to be a faithful person, but he said, you know, when they come in the office, I do what I have to do, and sometimes I have to get really firm and not treat people so well, and if we're bargaining with unions or whatever, and he said, I cut myself off at the door when I come in. I thought, wow, how do you do that? You know, but this was his way of being able to cope with what at the time was some not great people practices going on, and he could live with himself. So he compartmentalized so much that who he was not who he was at work. Okay, do you ever have a situation with people you know?
I thought all lawyers were supposed to represent their client, even though their client might be guilty.
Oh, well,
I thought that was sort of the practice, so I can see why he was having trouble with it. Because it really would end up that the attorney would have to only take people that he felt would be innocent, and to avoid having that problem.
well, in this case, he was working for the company, so he's always representing the company's interest, even if they were wrong, okay? And so, that was really presenting big challenges with him. It was easy to see that, I mean, when he talked, I'm like, wow, you're not the same person that I just talked to, you know, alone. So sometimes people do that. They really break themselves apart. And so this is what we mean by a divided life, that we come into different spaces and we break ourselves apart from who we are. What's our core identity? It's really important to know who you are. Who am I? Because when it comes down to hard decisions, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And don't think that just because you're not working, that you're not gonna have hard decisions. And those of you working, you know you will have hard decisions in your workplace or even in your family life. So who you are matters.
It really is very depressing, and it makes it almost impossible to live, really, when you are forcing yourself to be inauthentic for 8 hours a day.
Amen. Yes, it does. It is very difficult and exhausting to not be your authentic self in a workplace, in a family life, in friendships, whatever it is. Now, who would say, here, you can raise your hand, nod, just keep it to yourselves. Do any of you have inauthentic relationships? Even if you think you don't, I'll challenge you.
Okay, I do.
When you get together at Thanksgiving or have family gatherings, do you speak your mind about politics?
No,
Do you, those of you who said no, do you have positions and feelings about politics?
yes.
Yes. You're not,
I always learned though that really, when you're at a party around other people, it was best to avoid politics and religion.
and money.
Oh, I didn't notice that one, but politics and religion, because different people have different beliefs. And no matter, it just gets to be that it's an uncomfortable thing.
Okay, it can be. How do we make that conversation, those things better? How do we, what you said, I'd like to know, is that what you said?
We don't talk about it.
We just ignore it.
Yeah.
And can you see any problem with that? Not really.
But it's the easier way to.
It is the easier way to be, right? Right.
Up to a point.
Okay, up to a point.
Right.
This is where you need to know where the point is, right? What's the point?
Right.
Somebody comes into your house and whether it's family, friend, neighbor, whatever it is, and maybe they're there for a social gathering, maybe they're there just to visit you. And they start expressing prejudicial viewpoints.
Oh, I've had.
What
that
are you
happen.
gonna do?
I threw them out.
You threw them out?
They were a friend of a friend, but I mean, I didn't, whatever, I just threw them
You
out.
said no tolerance,
Yeah.
goodbye. One way to handle it. What else? Anybody else have that experience?
I'm still with the thing about not discussing it.
What if you don't bring it up, someone else does? What will you do?
Well.
I think sometimes you've had this situation where
Change
the
the
other
subject.
person just
Change the subject, change the subject.
somebody else decides to leave because they feel uncomfortable in
Okay.
your home.
Okay,
So it's sort of the same thing as you threw them out. They extricated themselves from the situation.
okay.
I had lunch recently with someone, and I know we have very differing opinions, and we just usually ignore it. But she said something and I said, I don't agree with the thing you just said, and we're not gonna go there. Which was just shutting it off, but it was, we switched the subject and
Mhm.
continued our lunch, but.
What would you say has to be present in difficult conversations? What has to be present to have a difficult conversation with someone?
Tell them that you love them.
Love,
Give and take.
a give and take, understanding,
You have to be
patience,
truthful.
truthful, tolerant. Yes. Most of all, loving underneath it all. Words have to come out of love. So sometimes, as you might guess, when I've been to visit people, not here, this is in my other congregation. I had a few people who were overtly prejudiced against African Americans. Okay. A lot of that was because they had never had any experience with neighbors, friends, working with, all right? So I knew that. But at the same time, I am pastor, right? I'm supposed to be guiding people on how we live, what we believe, what's underneath all of this, you know, being a Christian and a baptized child of God. I was with a gentleman, he was on his way to dying, he had cancer. And one day he said to me, he's passed away, by the way. One day he said to me, Pastor, I just don't understand why, and he goes, Black people are upset because, you know, being a slave, that was a gift that they had, so they could come here. Okay. So as I collected myself,
See, I couldn't do
As
that.
I
I would have stood
myself.
up and left immediately.
but you cannot. So what happens when you leave, right? You may make a statement for yourself, but they haven't changed at all,
True.
right?
You're right.
So then I said, well, I can't agree with that. And then we had a conversation about what it meant to be a slave and what we believe as followers. And you know, he listened. And not just because I was a pastor, especially because I know it wasn't because of that, because he was not in favor of women pastors. So then, you know, okay, so it was a few fronts that he was having problems. But we were able to have a conversation. But I think that often when we're in this divided place, struggle of who you are, and something like that happens, whether it's a workplace incident, and you get asked to do something that's unethical, or you're with someone who says something that just is so, so far and so terrible. To walk away is a statement, but nothing changes in your relationship. Even if you come to a place, I mean, what you said, Cindy, you're in a place with this person, you have lunch with them, you have a relationship, obviously. But you said there are places where we're not going to agree on this. We've had discussions and the relationship is not helped by us having further discussions. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Right, and it's not gonna change. either.
Right, but all you can do is to, one, what you did, avoid, or in a loving way, say, this is what I believe, this is why, and, I hope someday you might consider that, or we offer respect to one another. But I was saying this really difficult time, somebody says something truly outlandish and truly against. Speaking up is who you are. That's who we are as followers of Jesus. To not say something is what? If we don't speak out on behalf of those who are oppressed, who are mistreated, who are maligned,
You're guilty of the same thing.
we become part of the sin. We become part of the sin. So having a true identity is important. Who are you? And we just talked about how you know if you're disjointed. If you're disjointed, you have that feeling of being two different people in two different places. Okay, like my friend at Friday. What's the source of who you do? We talked about that already a little bit. Our family, our friends, our faith. These are the questions. Is it congruent with who you are? Is it equal to? Is it balancing? And we talked about not syncing those. You ever hear these statements? That is not the person I knew. He's not acting like him or herself. She's discovered who she really is. You ever hear those words? We hear them in the news sometimes. If you ever hear the interviews of somebody that's done, usually it's something egregious, killing, committing violence, whatever. And then the neighbors go, oh, but they were really a nice person. They were so quiet. I didn't know any, right? So usually that means they did not know the person. They just knew the surface, right? They knew the surface, or the person was a really divided person. And that is a very true thing that happens. We can become divided. We can become one way in this setting and another way in this setting. In scripture, we call that a particular name. Jesus called that name. Do you know what it is? Hypocrites. Which, does anybody know this is your test? Anybody know the Greek meaning of hypocrite? Nobody. Actor. An actor in the theater. That's what hypocrite really means. Being someone else. Being someone else. And Jesus used that in faith to talk to often the leaders, the lawyers, the scribes, some of them, not all of them, to say, you're hypocrites, you're acting like you're a follower, but your actions say something else, right? That's being divided, who you are, what you do. And I just put some workplace things on here, but we've already talked about it, but living a lie, okay? I don't know how many of you have been in workplaces. Oh, you gotta go to choir. All right, you got my divided life one. Okay. All right.
If I could just
Yeah,
add,
yes, please add.
Most of you probably know I work for Summer Valley School District.
Okay.
And I really struggle because there is a lot of that. Every single day, you're working with people that you know have very different views. And, I guess we sort of test the waters to see, as you work with people, you test the waters to see, okay, which which side do they fall down on? But then also in a school setting, we're not allowed to verbally say, get preachy, I guess is the quick and easy way to say it.
Make trust on your faith,
Exactly, and,
but you can talk about what you think is right or wrong.
right.
What informs that?
And I think that big, like, we're sort of going, no, we're not sort of, we are going through a very tough time right now. Post-election with a whole lot of stuff. And the big word we keep hearing is kindness.
That's
Be kind, be kind, be kind. And, you know, they're preaching it to the kids and they're preaching it to all of us. And management did have this idea that they were going to be able to get everybody in a room and we'd all like hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And I don't mean that to sound cynical, but that really didn't end well. And so now I feel like everybody is sort of tippy-toeing around, not knowing exactly how to respond. And
Some of the reason that didn't
It's-
end well, I can tell you already, is because their heart was in it. They were divided. Like, you can tell somebody all you want to be kind and be loving. But if it's not coming from within, if it's not something that is part of that person, telling someone's not gonna make it so, right?
yeah, well, you see it with kids on the playground too. They know the right answers to give, but they'll just as soon kick somebody in the shin or punch them in the face.
Kids, until they learn, until they get developed and shaped by people around them, are really good at divided lives, right? Right? And I don't know, any of you had kids, or maybe as a kid yourself, mom and dad walk out of the room, you did something you're not supposed to, then they come back in like, oh, no, I just, you know, right? Okay, that's a perfect example of being divided. But kids, that's part of the natural makeup. But by the time we get to our places in lives, we hope that who we are and what we do are consistent. Now, it doesn't mean you won't push up against barriers or people resisting you.
I think for me personally, I try to live out my faith and hope that others will observe my actions and words and behavior. And I don't know if it's always well received,
That's okay.
but yeah,
That's okay.
that's what I think.
That it's not well received often means that you've spoken hard words and that people usually know, or is creating this conundrum and they're struggling, which is okay too. You know, when you're having a conversation with you, it's
It
okay to
just seems
say.
like it should be easier because we are all working to support and lift up these
Young
children.
people, yeah.
And it's like, just give it up, give it a rest, these children.
This is who's important.
Yeah.
Right. Focus on it.
So,
Right, well, if we always did the right thing, you know, right, we only did the right thing. So sometimes there are, and Sally's just given this great example of what we sometimes call a false community. We pretend to be these things, or we say we're gonna do these things, but we really either don't believe them or we don't practice them behind closed doors. So, but living in faith, friends, living in faith in the secular world, especially work, is very challenging. It is, it's very challenging. And not just because people have a hard time talking about their faith, but because there are so many different viewpoints and what people think and how to navigate that is difficult. So you need to be prepared to say, why am I saying this? Why do I believe it? And so then we talk about when we have these incongruities, when they're not meshing, who or what owns us? How is that lived? Why is it important? What owns you? Sometimes in the workplace, we might think the workplace owns us. They have our lives. We have to do what we're told. That kind of thing. Or sometimes we get possessed by money or things or whatever it is going on in our lives, it could be a bad relationship, it could be addiction, it could be toxic people. So there are things that own us that are outside of monetary and work. We would say, who owns us? Who owns us? Who owns us?
Does my husband and dog count?
God, God owns us.
Yes.
God owns us. God, the creator. God owns our lives. And if we remember that God owns our lives and who we are, it'll be a little easier when you're in these situations to figure out how you're gonna handle it, what you're gonna do, because you remember, God owns me. My heart, my soul, my spirit belongs to God. That's who I belong to. So I hope you have places and people that you can talk to about those things. Just a little bit from last week, we talked about, do you find it easier to speak your mind when you get older? Do you feel you can be yourself more now as you age? Sometimes you do get to that as you age. You just feel like, I'm just done with all that, pretending to be someone else, trying to fit in, trying to, say the thing that I think won't cause disruption. I'm just done with it. This is who I am. No more mask, no more covering up. Doesn't mean you get to be mean or you get to be abusive or any of those things. It does mean to be your true self, your authentic self. God knows us because God knew us before we were born. God knew us in our wombs. And we're born with unique gifts and talents, blessings of God. And something that people often forget, we are created in the image of God. All of us, even those people we don't agree with, even if we are with people we see going down the wrong road. My brother that I talked to, that was so prejudicial that it hurt my heart, is still made in the image of God. And this is hard to remember. And because it brings us up short,
It's
doesn't it?
really hard to feel, like,
It
I have
is.
one person in my life who
Yeah.
infuriates me. And I have to really work at not hating them. But I do work at it because I know I shouldn't be hating anyone.
Because they are a child of God,
Yeah,
even if they're not listening, right?
yeah.
Even if they're not listening. So I don't know whether you have a Bible on your phone or you, however you have your Bible. But we want to look at Psalm 71, and we're gonna have to do this pretty quick because we've had such good conversation. We're coming to the end of our time. But I do want to get to Psalm 71. So Psalms are what? Do you know what Psalms are? Prayers. What kind of writing are they? Are they prophetic? No.
No.
No,
Praising God.
praising God, songs. Psalms are songs. They're prayers. Lamentations, yes, they do lament. So go to Psalm 71. And if I could have somebody help read this, it is a little lengthy.
I can read if you want.
Would you like to read? Who else is volunteering? Cindy?
Oh, what's Cindy doing?
Oh.
Okay.
I don't care.
We can split it or you can read it all, however you want to.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
In you, O Lord, I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me and rescue me. Incline your ear to me and save me. Be to me a rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. Rescue me, O God, from the hand of the wicked, from the grasp of the unjust and cruel. For you, O Lord, are my hope, my trust, O Lord, from my youth. Upon you I have leaned from my birth. It was you who took me from my mother's womb. My praise is continually of you. Someone else?
Okay, my God, Cindy.
I have been like important to many, but you are my strong refuge. My mouth is filled with your praise and with your glory all day long. Do not cast me off in the time of old age. Do not forsake me when my strength is spent. For my enemies speak concerning me, and those who watch for my life consult together. They say, pursue and seize that person whom God has forsaken, for there is no one to deliver. O God, do not be far from me. O my God, make haste to help me. Let my accusers be put to shame and consumed. Let those who seek to hurt me be covered with scorn and disgrace. But I will hope continually and will praise you yet more and more. My mouth will tell of your righteous acts, of your deeds of salvation all day long. Though their number is past my knowledge, I will come praising the mighty deeds of the Lord God. I will praise your righteousness, yours alone. We keep going or you want to?
No, somebody else wanna go? I'll read. O God, from my youth you have taught me, and I still proclaim your wondrous deeds. So even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me until I proclaim your might to all generations to come. Your power and your righteousness, O God, reach the high heavens. You who have done great things, O God, who is like you? You have made me see many troubles and calamities, will revive me again. You will bring me up again. You will increase my honor and comfort me once again. I will also praise you with the heart for your faithfulness, O my God. I will sing praises to you with the lyre and Holy One of Israel. My lips will shout for joy when I sing praises to you, my soul also, which you have rescued. All day long, my tongue will talk of your righteous help, for those who try to do me harm have been put to shame and disgraced. What's the theme here? Anybody have a theme out of that psalm?
God protects you, protecting you.
God's protection for sure is here, yes.
One other thing about Psalms is it's easier to read. When I was in country school as a kid, we had to take turns reading the Bible, and it was always, we always knew that the boys always picked to read from Psalms because it was easier to read.
Is that right?
Yeah, they always picked Psalms to read from.
And I think sometimes people do pick Psalms to read because they are so relational. They so speak of our human condition. And that's what this psalm does. Keep me away from evil, keep me away from those who would destruct me. There's a lot of requests of God here. God, stay near. God, don't go far away. But then there's affirmation. I know, O Lord, I know you're my hope, my trust. From my beginning until this time of gray hairs, you've been there. So help me remember. Your power, your righteousness reach far beyond the heavens. You've made me see things. So what will I do? At the very end, I will sing praises to God all the time. So the psalmist is really going through this time of change, it appears, this time of change, but wanting to stay in God. And I think sometimes when we're having those hard moments, this is where we are. I'm out of sorts. Ever feel out of sorts? Things aren't quite gelling. This is a good psalm for that. It's a good psalm for being out of sorts and for changing times in your health and your age and your jobs, whatever it is. It's a good psalm to go back to because it assures us of God's presence and reminds us of who God is. That which never ends. So I don't know if you've ever read The Peace Pilgrim, but this is an old book. If you want to serve the universe, the obvious place to begin is right where you are, right here. That's where I began, he says. I looked at every situation I came to and I wondered, what can I do to be of service in this situation? Sometimes there's nothing I could do, but often there was a helping hand, a word of cheer, a pleasant smile. Then after I'd given a lot, a most wonderful spiritual receiving began, giving me more to give. So I think the author is saying giving begets giving, but he also says receiving is happening. Giving is wonderful, but receiving is just as important. What we receive from God, what we receive from others. Knowing how to receive helps us know how to be better givers. Think about that. Because I know some people say it's better to be a giver than a receiver, right? This is something for you to think about this week. If you had to pick someone in your life who you think led a very meaningful life, who would it be? And why is that so? What kind of person were they? So think and ponder about the person that you think has had a very meaningful life. Why? Why is it so? And ponder what we've talked about. What's it mean to be versus to do? So this is just acknowledgements of the books I've used. Next week, we're going to talk about falling upward. That sounds weird, doesn't it? Falling upward. Stepping stones to a greater spiritual understanding. So ponder who it is in your life that you would say has a very meaningful life. Could be somebody living or already deceased. Doesn't matter. Let's bring that next week, because if you don't mind sharing, I think that would be good to hear by all people. If you're willing to do so, you don't have to. Before we go, shall we have some prayer? Lord God, we give you thanks for all the ways you continue to abide with us, your far-ending righteousness, your presence from the time we were born till where we are now. Lord God, we know you never leave us, but sometimes we forget. Be with us in all the ways we are in the world. Help us to be who you made us, that we would seek to do your will in the world, even when it is challenging, even when we butt up against hard walls or people that say things that we know goes against what you say. In your name, O Lord, we pray and give thanks and ask your continued mercy and forgiveness. Amen.
And
Thank you so much for being here. I have to run. So don't worry about anything. I will come clean it up.
Getting up really.
Last person out. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. I'll have to remember it. Yeah.